This video is about polarity and polar bonds. We can't discuss polarity and polar bonds without first starting with electronegativity. Electronegativity is a relative value of how strongly an element attracts electrons towards itself. So the highest electronegative element, fluorine, pulls electrons towards itself more strongly than the second most electronegative element, oxygen, and so on. Well, why is this important? Well, let's look at a covalent bond. In theory, the electrons are shared in between the two atoms. However, if one of those atoms is more electronegative than the other, those electrons will be pulled closer towards the atom that has higher electronegativity. At this point, the relative charges will also shift. You do not have neutral atoms forming this covalent bond anymore. You now have one end that is partially negative because it has those electrons closer to it, and one end that is partially positive because of the absence of electrons. This is the concept of polarity in a nutshell. We would refer to this bond as a polar bond or a dipole, as there is a positive end and a negative end. There are several ways these bonds can be depicted. The one here with the deltas being delta positive and delta negative is a very common way of doing it in organic chemistry, although the dipole arrow is also relatively common. It really depends on what you want to emphasize on. These bonds are still covalent bonds. They just happen to have ionic character.